All right, and we are live. Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleisher Show, broadcasting live from Judea to the world. You're a part of it wherever you are. And shalom and welcome to Rav Mike Feuer of Mike. Shalom and welcome.
Shalom Yishai, good to see you. It's been a little
It's
while.
great to see you. Yeah, it's been a little bit, so it's good to be on with you again. And a few important things before we start is that today is my father's yortzeit. It's his 19th yortzeit, and that actually also means that it's your father's yortzeit coming up as well, because usually you do a Hanukkah class for your dad's yortzeit. And today, is that cool? That is cool. That's great. Okay, so we could definitely promote that. My father's yortzeit is today. It's 19 years since he passed away, but a lot of good things have happened in his memory today. For example, a project that I'm working on in Hebron of putting up a beautiful new Chanukiah was lit for the first time last night on my dad's yortzeit, and then an old lamp that he bequeathed to me, and it's a beautiful lamp, really, really something special. But it's like its electricity was a little bit problematic. Was fixed today by a great friend and electrician, David. Was here at the house and a listener of the show, so shout out to David. And other little things that just reminded me of my father were just apparent today, and that's great. And just little. Yeah, just little sparks of a deceased loved one's neshama kind of lighting up, and that's a lot of fun. And the other announcement is that we're almost at Hanukkah. We are almost at Hanukkah. Hanukkah. This is the last show before Hanukkah, so we should get a little bit ready for Hanukkah. And I'm looking forward to maybe you're going to be doing some kind of special or something, or you can refer us to something that you've done on the Maccabees.
On the Maccabees. Well, actually, the good news is I think I'm going to take up a challenge that you mentioned to me recently. Is that I'm going to have my shir on Thursday night, which will go out as a normal podcast. But next week, when normally I wouldn't be working, I think I'm going to make that podcast you invited me to make. What's the wisdom that Am Yisrael has and how we survive the transition between empires? Because I think both you and I share the sense that we're in such a phase. I think I just lost you for a second, but it's okay because I was uninterrupted in my stream of speech. Can't hear you. You're muted, buddy.
Yeah, it's all good. I was listening to you. I was just taking care of a technical thing.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a very exciting challenge that we discussed, you and I, which is how did the Jewish people transition through empires?
And what's the wisdom we've acquired?
Right. What's the wisdom that we've acquired? This is in a kind of reply that I had to a donor of mine, a very important donor for Hebron, and I sat with him. Well, there's donors and there's major donors. Some people have the schut, the merit in this world to be major donors. Not everybody.
I understand, but I'm just saying there's no such thing as an unimportant donor because they differentiate themselves even by their willingness to give, $18 a year.
Absolutely,
different than most.
100%. And donors are beautiful people, and we can have a long conversation about what I would call, if I would write about it, I would call it the beauty of fundraising. And there in Beauty of Fundraising is something that my good friend Alex Trayman told me in one of the Alex Wisdoms, is that he said to me, fundraising is a beautiful thing because you get to meet great people. And it turns out that people who are willing to give are beautiful. And then people who have also made it big in this world have what to teach you. And they are wise and they're interesting. In any case, this one donor that I was with, we were sitting in a hotel lobby, and he says to me with all honesty, he says, Yishai, I fear that if America goes down, so too will Israel. And I understand that, as he's an American Jew and a successful one, and in his mind, Israel depends on America. But I said to him, no, that's not the way it's going to go. I said to him, we pivot. And I said to him, within a span of a few hundred years, we pivoted from the Babylonian Empire to the Persian Empire to the Greek Empire to the Roman Empire, and we were able to pivot and learn the new things and be influential in all those big stories. And he said to me, "You're right," and his eyes lit up, and he just realized that Netzach Yisrael Lo Yishaker, the Jewish people are not going to go down, and not that I'm hoping for America's demise or departure, although when I saw that now they are in some place somewhere where I don't remember where exactly, they're taking away a Jefferson statue out of some place. I said to myself, okay, well, if you're taking away Jefferson, you're taking away
everything he ever wrote, and we know what that means.
Right. If he's now what's the word? What's the popular word? Debunked, canceled. then okay, then your whole thing. But I'll tell you the truth. Like for me, I'm ready to. I'm a Zionist. I see Israel as the big thing, and I'm ready to pivot if necessary to China or whatever it is, or just to pivot to what I'd really like to pivot to, which is
pivot to China.
Right. I'd love to pivot to an Israel, right? I'd love to pivot to a real Israel. But what does make me a little bit sad is the pivot away from America. And I'm not talking now about reliance. I don't think Israel should be reliant on anybody or a puppet state of anybody. But in any case, the pivot away from America. What's that? That's right. Thank you for saying that, which is the real pivot is not even to Israel, which is the real pivot is to God. Thank you. And you're absolutely right. And I appreciate that you said it that way. But I do want to give one plug, which is America's thing is liberty and freedom with all of its downsides.
It's always been,
it's this thing that this empire brought into the world. And it will be, if the choice is between the liberty and freedom of the United States with all of its baggage to the unliberty and unfreedom of China, with all its successes, right? It's like the choices, but
pretty clear.
But I'm looking forward to your podcast on that. It's funny you mentioned that because friends, we're talking about this because really this Torah portion Vayeshev is in many ways the beginning of a shift.
It's true.
Towards the power of Egypt. Egypt is coming into the Israel sphere in this parsha.
It's interesting. It's the rise of empire in our story. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, ever since Abraham left Assyria, and there's been a little bit of context there in terms of the War of the Four Kings and the Five Kings and the shifting nature of the retreat of the sort of Eastern empires and the rise of the Egyptian empire. But this is the one where it really starts to become less of a distant context and more of a central element.
Well, and we're moving there. We're moving in.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of the court Jew. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean to say it's a different style, a different epoch of the Jewish relationship to the Gentiles, the Jew in a non-Jewish court. We're beginning that. We're beginning that in this week's Torah portion. And it's the beginning of exile. It's the Jewish people leaving the land of Israel and the beginnings of the move towards Egypt. So that happens now. So let's just set it up for a second. We're talking about Yaakov Avinu growing the son from his beloved wife Rachel, which is Joseph, and the Torah hints to us right from the get-go, which is that he has a favoritism complex. He's favoring Joseph. Right, there's an issue there. And that famous play.
But that's how he grew up, remember? His mother favored him.
Right. His mother favored him. His father favored the other guy.
Yeah. So you would think on one hand he'd know what it feels like. The other hand, that's how he learned to parent. So it's complicated, as is all the parent-child relationships and brother-sister, et cetera, in Breshit.
That's right. So you have this Joseph, and there's that famous piece of clothing, the Technicolor Dreamcoat, which is so beloved and so awesome. And yet it could turn, and it will turn in this very Torah portion into a symbol of death, or at least perceived death, and also of division instead of unity. It is the bloody sign of division, which when the brothers sell their own brother Joseph, they're going to take that Technicolor Dreamcoat and dip it in the blood of an animal and present it to Yaakov. A little bit, by the way, it kind of, I don't know how, but it reminds me of the binding a little bit. It's like here's the blood of it's presented as the real article, but like the blood of a ram replaced the blood of Isaac. So to here, the blood of this animal is going to replace the blood of Joseph, but it's perceived as real, as full.
And not to miss the parallel that Rashi points out, which is there's also a link here to Yaakov's act of deception to Yitzchak in using the skin of, a goat in order to put himself forward as something that he was not, right? Mm-hmm. And in this, the sages tell us that even though Yaakov in the end acted correctly and moved the divine plan forward, when we do damage in life, even for the right reasons, it always ramifies down through time. There are consequences.
Isn't that beautiful what you're saying? And this to me is the magic of Torah, which is, it's not magic. It's real. It's gritty. And when you speak to Christian folks and you ask them about their God and you're like, did he ever make mistakes? They're like, no, not really. And if you ever talk to Muslims, certainly, and you say to them, did Muhammad make mistakes? It's canonized as no, he didn't make mistakes. Like even the good acts of the hero Jews.
And then you ask the Jews, they're like, "Oi, let me tell you what he
did.
did.
He make mistakes?
It's a
Did
whole
he make
mistakes
mistakes
on his mistakes."
Right. And even the good things, even the right things, have ramifications. That is a completely different level.
We all know, and you were talking about the type of people who become major donors and how they have what to teach us. And one of the things that I've always learned from those who have been successful in life is there is no success without failure.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no, as doing something real and significant in the world means that you're taking risks, you're going beyond what you really know how to do, and that involves failure. And we are the people who have mastered the art of failing forward through time. And that's why it must be that we learn, because the truth is the things we do right are not necessarily the ones that people need to know. It's how we fail and how we deal with that failure where much of the wisdom lies in our heroes.
So that's right. And at the same time, it's not always easy to read about that, those failing forwards. And the Torah portion, the Torah in the book of Genesis, which is the foundational set of stories of really mankind, it takes a turn in this parsha that makes it harder. It just makes it harder. If beforehand we had conflict between Abraham and his nephew and fighting wars, and Isaac and the Philistines, and Jacob with his own brothers, suddenly, but you always felt like Esau was not exactly, the brother to love anyway. He wasn't the character to love. Suddenly, these tribes of Israel are going to be selling out their own brother, and we're going to be dealing with that till the very end of the book of Genesis. So the Torah,
on some level, to the end of time, right?
Right.
There's a messianic vision of a reunion there.
The Torah is definitely taking us on a bumpier journey. And I know people like my wife Malka is like, ooh, this is the tougher part of the book of Bereshit when we enter this. The other thing, which is important to note, is that we're also entering another epoch, which is what I called the program today, which is the epoch of dreams, dream sequences. There are really 6 dreams that we're going to meet now, and they're 3 doubles: the Joseph's 2 dreams, Joseph's 2 dreams, the 2 servants of Pharaoh's dreams in prison, and then later in the next parsha, Pharaoh's dreams, which I think are very significant.
I mean, in all fairness, those also began last parsha with Yaakov.
Okay.
I mean, the last 2 parsha. I mean, his dream of the ladder, and his, whether it was a dream or not, of struggling. The Vata Ish, remember Yaakov the Vadon, he was left alone and he struggled through the night. So Yaakov once again lays the groundwork. But I think you're correct. We're entering an epic of dreams where it's going to shape our story in an unprecedented manner.
Well, the difference between those dreams is that those dreams, like the dream that Jacob had with the ladder, God said to him, well, this is what it means. This is the covenant. This is the thing. And the ladder itself is such an overt a connection between heaven and earth. And you can read to it a million things and really,
it's pretty clear what it does.
Right. So it's clear what it does. And then the struggle, the same thing. Like you came out like, okay, your name is Israel. I'll grant you that. Here, it's going to be more mysterious. You're going to have to also not only dream the dream, but also interpret the dream. And the rabbis say the interpretation is. One time I had a friend, a female friend, who had a dream, and she told it to me, and I'm like, oh, I can't make anything of that. And then she said, well, I took it to another lady who is a dream interpreter, and she said this. And she said these things to me, and I'm like, wow. Like upon hearing their interpretation, I was like, that is so, I don't know. It worked. You know what I mean? It's like pieces of a puzzle that work together. Uh-huh. So my point is that there's not only dreams, there's also the interpretation of such. And the first set of dreams is the dreams of the supremacy, shall we say, the Elyonut, the aboveness,
the elevation.
Okay. Of Joseph above his brothers. You know what? Before I want you to comment on that, but before we do, I just want to say hi to all the folks that are saying hi to us right now. First thing, our good friend Yitzi says, Yitzi from J Brick, great Jewish Lego, and I'm sure he's got great stuff for Hanukkah. So check it out, jbrick.com. And Yitzi says, may your father's neshama have an aliyah. May both of your fathers neshama.
Yeah.
Fathers
I was
plural,
reading
not fathers.
the
Very good.
Shemot, yeah, so.
Very good. Thank you,
Amen.
Yitzi.
Should be blessed with long life.
Amen. Boker Tov from Daniel. Denise says, Shalom from New York. Good Yontif. I think she might mean Yutes Kislev, the great Chabad holiday.
If it's a Git Yontif, yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Get Yontif, of course. And it was. And I want to tell you that we had a Hachnasat Sefer Torah. We had a brand new Sefer Torah come into our Chabad here downstairs, right under my house yesterday. Exciting. So that was great. Let's see. We have here, Shalom Rabbis, Israel pivoted from dependence, whatever level, to self-sufficiency and leadership among the like-minded nations. Axis of peace from Greece, Israel, UAE, the Kingdom of India, the other side, Abraham Accords.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with that, by the way, because when I see what the real pivot I'm hoping to make is a post-empire world, right? That's part of what I want to speak about, because we as a people really represent the opposite pole in that sense. So stay tuned, Steve. I got what to add to that thought. I agree with you.
Yeah. Yes. But I also want to say that maybe part of our the thing that we do is that we're a Jiminy Cricket, if I may date myself. We are a conscience. We are a small people meant to touch, whisper to the world, give them a thought, give them a way, help them be guided through it. And sometimes I think to myself that sometimes Israel is a being unto itself, and sometimes it is a advisor. What do you call that? A consultant to the world, a spiritual. Yeah, consultant to the world.
Yeah. No, listen, but that's exactly what I mean. Is that the conscience is a powerful label that you're naming, because then our goal is to help people be who they really are meant to be. Yeah, and that's a different model of empire, and it's precisely, not to give away my podcast, but it's precisely what I'm driving at. Is you could say it's an empire of a type because there is an organizing principle there, but the organizing principle is how to help peoples become who they are. It's in many ways the very positive image of nationalism. Hazoni's book, I think, puts it forward in a very powerful fashion. It's not necessarily my chidush, but I got what to say.
Love that book. It's called the Virtue of Nationalism.
Oh, good, thank you.
Virtue of Nationalism, and I read it all. I finished it. It's sadly not on like Audible and stuff, but it is a wonderful.
It's also not
book.
the easiest book to plow through. It's long and.
I thought it was good.
If you make it was good. If you make it through the first third, I think you get the clarity of his point.
Good. It's funny you say that, because I actually thought that the last third, when it comes to Israel and other things, was fabulous. Sonia says, Shalom Rabbis, we have our tickets and we'll see you on December 8th, Irvine, Texas. That is correct. I will be in Texas. I'll be in Dallas and in Irvine or Irving, whatever Irvine, I think probably, I don't know. But I'll be right outside of Dallas at Mercury Studios. It's going to be a lot of fun with
that should
Dallas
be a singular rabbi, because
that's right. Well, you'll be there in spirit with me, and maybe we'll plug you in. You're certainly, I'll mention your name there. Okay, Bezrat Hashem, and I'll be in Dallas right after Hanukkah, and I can't wait to do a gig for Dallas Jewish conservatives and speak to the good folks. And I'm sure that I have a lot to share, but I love to also get that Texas spirit, and I can't wait to get some of that on the road back. Let's keep going for a second. Aina says, Shalom from Norway. Yay! We got good folks in Norway. I believe in you, Norway. It doesn't all have to be the dark side of Oslo. It could be the strong. Yeah, I'm sorry. Norway. It's a great, beautiful.
I'm just laughing because you can't really blame a people for its foreign policy, but
you're right. I think that's what
if
I'm
anything,
saying.
Exactly the foreign policy pieces. Yeah.
Well, you can a little bit blame people for the leadership that they have, but and all the way from, so we were at Norway, now to North Carolina. Shalom to Maryland. She says, Shalom from North Carolina, the great state of North Carolina. I haven't been there in many years, but it's
my favorite state in the union.
It is. Y'all come back now. You hear? That's what they tell you there, actually. And then we have India. Okay, the world's biggest democracy, this incredible country. I gotta do India one time. I don't think I'll fulfill my. I don't
think you're really Israeli if you.
Right, exactly. I don't think I'm really Israeli until I go to India. Isn't that true? Come on, we all know that's true. And our good friend Lou Weiss, who helps produce the show, says, "Welcome back, looking and sounding great." Lou,
hello.
You are beautiful. Atayafeh. You are just awesome. Okay, it's great to have you. Thank you so much. Simon says, "Shalom from the UK." Shannon, our good friend, says hello from all the way here in Gush Etzion. So she's across the way from me here right now. God bless you, Shannon. And more, as usual, from England. Shalom from Manchester. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of shaloms.
Maybe we should move forward with the show, though.
Yeah, I think you're right. So God bless all of you guys. God bless you. God bless you wherever you are. And thank you so much. And Debbie says Hashem calls to us his witnesses. Love that. That's right. We are his witnesses. Atem idai. That's actually a phrase. You are my witnesses. Atem idai. You are my witnesses, right? Huh?
That's right. Yishai.
Okay, very good. Fine. All right. Listen, let's talk a little bit about, I don't know, Messiah.
Oh. Okay, just jump into it.
Let's talk about that a little bit. The selling
complex.
No complex for me. I got over that in high school. I got over that. I
think there's some would say it took you through college, but okay.
Yeah. I was actually going to say first year of yeshiva. That's the real truth. But it took a little time. That's okay. Everybody. If you've never had a little bit of a Messiah complex, you're not doing something right. And if you didn't get over it, you're definitely doing something wrong.
Then call me.
Listen, you got this Judah, you got this Yehuda. He's this he's supposed to be the chieftain. He's supposed to be the boss of the Jewish people.
He's the big brother.
He's the big bro, and he's the man. He's the guy. You know, he's the leader, and you just know it. You know it when you see him. You know it when he walks into the room. You just know that he's the guy. He's the king. He's the guy, and yet when they sell Yosef, he goes down. I like to think of him as just starting to drink. You know what I mean? He just he becomes not himself. You know what I mean? He's just
the slide. He's descent, like the Torah even says.
Right. He goes down from his brothers, the Torah says, and he marries a non-Jewish lady, and he has these kids, and he's just he's off the reservation, right? He's broken. He's no longer on the team so much. He's not on side. And he has these sons, Er and Onan, and they marry this lady named Tamar. Now, she's a very special lady. She's probably the daughter of Shem. She comes from a priesthood family. And at the same time, these two boys have some bad qualities in them, and they don't want to see her get pregnant. Probably they don't want to see her, I don't know, beauty get lost, or maybe they don't want to take responsibility for the next generation. They both die. God smites them. And now it's the third son's turn to marry Tamar. But Yehuda doesn't want to give him to Tamar because maybe she's like a black widow thing, and take responsibility. But she sits as a widow. Finally, she hears that Yehuda's wife passes away and that he's going to shear his sheep. She gets dressed up like a lady that hangs out in the
at the crossroads.
At the crossroads, and that's right, at the crossroads. But and I love this phrase, "Einayim al hadarech," is on the path, which is the crossroads. But it's also like this lady's got her eyes on the path. She knows where it needs to lead.
She also sees the things that are crossroads, and therefore the situation demands action, which would otherwise be of a morally questionable nature. And that's part of the power of the story is that not to sort of brush aside so easily moral standards, but all general rules find their challenge in exceptional moments. And one of the powers of the Jewish story, I can tell as somebody who's spent the last 15 years of his life trying to get it straight, is that for every sort of disastrous failure, there's also a power of breaking the rules in order to make the story go forward. And it's a very dangerous and very obviously fraught endeavor. Nonetheless, right? The sages even sort of codified it as a notion of "Eit lasot l'Hashem hefiru et Toratecha." Right? The verse says it's time to act for God because they've nullified your Torah, but they took it as it's a time to act for God by nullifying your Torah when that Torah is itself in risk. And so her eyes on the crossroads here are the fact that she saw this moment, that if it were missed, something would fail to come into the world, which she had been created to do.
Right. Well, so here you have this great king, but he's lost, and he's like, drinking.
Let's call him a prince. He's not a king. Yeah, it's his line, but But at this point, he's literally the head of the pack, so to speak.
Right, he's the head of the pack, but he's lost, and everybody's lost. And this woman, and she grabs him by the Yetzer, right? By the what's the word I'm looking for here?
By his desires.
By desire. And yet her genius is to bring him back up and to bring his seed back up. And to capture it properly. Now, Kabbalistically speaking, the sages say that is the lot of the messianic seed, is that it has to be hidden away in the dark places, because if it's frontal, it gets knocked down. It'll be clobbered by the dark forces in this world, and so it has to go the back alley way. It cannot go the frontal way. And they show that the lineage of the Davidic, the messianic seed, the Davidic dynasty, comes always through these back corners, these dark corners. That's one aspect of it. And the other aspect of it is that just as she is going to rescue him from this spiral and take this very what did you call it, like a fraught course, right?
Mm-hmm.
I learned Hashem Mishmuel, which I think is so moving. It says you should serve Hashem b'chol levavecha b'chol nafshecha, with all of your heart, with all of your soul. So then the rabbis are like, even if you have to give up your soul, as in if you have to die, I'll kiddush Hashem for the sanctification of God's name. So the Hashem Mishmuel says, so if you died for sanctifying God's name, how did you lose your soul? You didn't lose your soul, you gained your soul. He's like, you didn't lose your soul if you died for the sanctification of God's name. He's like, you know which people lose their soul? The people that are threatened with losing their soul, people like Tamar, who are like allowing themselves to be called a harlot and every other kind of name, and maybe act in the wrong way for Kiddush Hashem. They sacrifice their soul for Kiddush Hashem, but those are the people that serve it with all of everything that they got, because they were even willing to lose their good soul in this world, and somebody would accuse them of wrong acts.
I mean, it's similar to the story of Esther in that sense. Another sort of redemptive, though, of a limited impact in its time, and I think part of that is because there's a power of sort of completely liberating the energy within the human existence, detaching it from our own interests. And this is where, by the way, it's not surprising that it was the Shem Shmuel you read this, because Surah Chassidut has at least one tiny tendril still linked into Sabbateanism. You froze there. You still there?
I'm here. I'm just fixing up something to make sure that we can have good.
You know, which is the sense that, again, when the Torah puts very clear boundaries on the permitted and the forbidden, and you know what we call the forbidden? We call it a sul, which really means it's bound. It's bound. Its energy is not available for our service of God. But there are these moments, it seems, where that energy, needs to be released in order to push the story forward. That was the madness of Sabbateanism, but it's also the revolutionary power of things like Chassidut, which were able to just lightly touch that. I mean, not surprising to me that it's a Chassidish Avort that you're reading that. And again, I'm not advocating that people go out there and break the rules, but I think that people who have understood that what they're called upon to do on some level can only be judged between them and God. And there are moments like that in time where you're not just trying to justify that your action is right. You're trying to justify that it's what's required. And that's two different things. It's a saying that Reb Shlomo used to say, is that he wasn't afraid to give up on a portion of the world to come, his own world to come, for the sake of someone else's. Sometimes you do things, you don't try to justify that they were right.
Say it again. Say it slower.
I'll tell you a quick story from a teacher of mine who was a musmachez. He was Reb Shlomo didn't give smicha to a lot of people. So this teacher of mine was at the
Can you say the name?
This teacher? No, I'm gonna leave it out.
Okay.
I'm gonna leave it out. He was at the I'm forgetting the name of the retreat center in America. It's like in America, it's a very popular retreat center amongst progressive Jews. It's called Isabel Friedman. The Isabel Friedman Retreat Center. I've never been there.
I haven't been there.
You're not in the progressive crowd, man. You got to get in. Anyway, so he was there. He's a mashgiach. So he's there checking it out to see if he could kasher the place for a program he wanted to do. Fine. As he's got big, long beard, big kippah, like type A Orthodox rabbi, right? So he's walking out, and this woman comes running, says, Rabbi, please wait. Can you help us? He says, what? He says, we need a 10th person for a minyan. Someone needs to say Kaddish. So he's no fool, right? If they're calling for the 10th person at Isabella Friedman, and this woman runs out to get him, it's probably an egalitarian minyan. Turns back. I said, what did you do? He said, well, what do you mean I do? Turn around, walk right back in, and stood there while she said Kaddish. And I said, oh, but, and we were talking, and I said, yeah, but, do you feel like that's sore? And you know what he said to me? He didn't try to make some answer about how. And he says, my teacher told me, Reb Shlomo, that you can't be afraid to give up on a portion of your own world to come for the sake of somebody else's. He said, what would have happened if the rabbi looked this woman in the face and said, you don't count in this very important moment for you? He said, but I'm not telling you it was right what I did.
Right.
And if there's a cheshbon, the cheshbon is mine.
Right.
You hear the power there? This is the type of power I'm talking about, is that it's a revolutionary power. It's a dangerous one, in all honesty, because you can do real damage, and, right and wrong are still right and wrong. But it's the power which I believe that Tamar seized here. It's the power and the other elements of the Messianic story that you were referring to, which look very similar. And on some level, it seems to be a critical element in pushing the story forward.
Mm-hmm. That's a great story. I actually had a very similar story myself. One time I was at the kotel, at the family kotel, what I called. It was exactly the same scenario.
I call it the family kotel. I like a good phrase. I like that.
Yeah, I call it there's the men's side, the women's side, and the family side.
The family section. That's a beautiful thing. I'm going to borrow that from you.
It's so simple. It's like, what's the big deal?
Because it's honest and it's like affirming and not offensive. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, and that's the way I think about it. I'm like, okay, let's say I wanted to go to the kotel with my daughter, could that happen? Yes. So I go to the family kotel. What's the problem? It's perfect.
Right.
It's just that simple. I just think that we really should chill out about the whole kotel thing. Really,
I mean,
I really wish the kotel was a thing that brought people together instead of dividing.
It's an insane manifestation of the problems in Jewish history that we are once again warring, over this plot of ground.
Yeah, it's not the way to do it. It's really not the way to do it. And I wish we would take all of that energy and try to allow Peel to jump up to the top.
The last time I was there on Rosh Chodesh, I got ejected from the Kotel Plaza for confronting a bunch of Haredi boys who were like getting overly aggressive. And the security guard ejected me, and I was like, "You're kicking me out? Why?" He said, "Yeah, because you're going to listen to me." And I was like,
well, one time we had Desmond Tutu was coming to Cardozo Law School to receive a prize from a very left-leaning group in the school, the International Law Forum or group, whatever. And so we demanded, Malka and I demanded that we have a protest against Desmond Tutu, who we understood to be an anti-Semite, an anti-Israel anti-Semite. So we were called into the what's he called, I forgot the name. It's not a principal, I guess, in a law school, the deacon, chancellor, whatever. And he was a good man and not a Jewish man. And he says, okay, we thought about it, and you can have your protest outside of the school. So I said to the dean, I said, Dean, do you know why Cardozo Law School was founded? So that we can have a Jewish law school. Because other law schools and other places wouldn't let us in. Now an anti-Semite is coming into my school that my people founded so that we could have a law school of our own, and you're kicking me out of the building and letting him in? That's not right. And he looked at me and he goes, you're right. And we protested inside, and Desmond Tutu had big fat egg on his face, and he was not happy that we
metaphorically.
Yes, it was metaphorical egg on his face. Why did I mention that?
Throw eggs at people.
That's related to. How does that related?
It's related to feeling good about standing up to people.
That's right. Standing up for what's right, not just standing up for people. Standing up for what's right. Anyway, family kotel. Listen, we're low on time. Just one last question for you, which is, okay, so you have Tamar, which takes the bull by the horns, so to speak, right? That's right. In order to further the amazing lineage which would lead to King David. But at the same time, there's another woman in the Torah portion, and this is Mrs. Potiphar, who's married to Mr. Potiphar, and she accosts Joseph down in Egypt and wants to have relations with him. And so much to the point that she kind of forces him, and he runs away from her, leaving his, just like Judah had to leave his clothes, his signet ring and his staff and his cloak with Tamar. So Mrs. Potiphar had his cloak. So that's really the third piece of clothing, if you count also the beginning.
Oh no, it's a big theme in this story, the clothing and Joseph in general. Next week he gets pulled out and changed, etc. Yeah.
And yet interesting that even Rashi and the rabbis are like, actually, although her behavior was just abhorrent, she actually meant it for the good, because she saw in the constellations that she was supposed to be part of the redemptive process that she was supposed to.
The continuation of his line, very similar to what Tamar saw.
Right.
Yeah.
So they like actually the rabbis, interestingly enough, a lot of times when somebody's kind of bad in the Torah at face value, they see him much worse. And here's somebody who's really pretty bad. They see her as being a little bit better than how she comes off in the text.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't think anyone tries to justify her actions in the way they try to with Tamar. Meaning she was wrong. In the end, it was her daughter that he marries. Right. And so this, in a certain sense, this is the flip side of the warning, which is that she misunderstood what she was called upon to do in this situation. And in many ways, that's the warning. Although I would say that the focus of the story there is on Yosef and the sort of fact that Yehuda described this slide, and how in many ways Tamar is the one that turns him around. So Yosef seems like he has a similar slide. He ends up in the pit twice. But really, it's a process of elevation for him, because he comes more and more clear in who he was. Yehuda knew who he was.
Right.
He knew his brothers listened to him. He knew he'd been appointed, etc. Yosef had to discover. And so there was a very different process, and therefore the Eshet Potiphar, right, the woman, Potiphar's wife, Mrs. Potiphar, if you could call her that, plays a very different role in that process.
Mm-hmm. And that process is going to be later on remembered at the splitting of the Red Sea, where the Medrash says that the Red Sea was willing to overcome its nature of being water that goes to the edge and is flat. And when it saw the bones of Joseph, the coffin of Joseph, it said, "Oh, I will retreat from he who retreated from Mrs. Potiphar and overcame his nature. So too will I retreat and overcome my nature." So we have here, not only do we have the exile, but we also have in here the beginnings of the story. The minute where the Jewish people are exiled, the Zionism, the yearning to return, the yearning to receive the Torah at Sinai and come to the land of Israel already begins. Rav Mike Feuer, I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and God bless you. I want everybody to check out your other podcast, which is Jewish Story. We haven't been together for a while, so why don't you help me remember how people can reach you and find
if they go to Jewish Story CO or ravmike.com, there's contact information there. You can send me an email or on Facebook, ravmikefeuer@gmail.com. And otherwise, smoke signals work. That works, yeah.
Smoke signals, that's right, or pigeons. Rav Mike Feuer, Shabbat Shalom, God bless you. May we see the light of Mashiach this Shabbat. May our fathers' neshamas have an aliyah, and may we have Hanukkah, which is the holiday of, we could fix it, we could make it better, we could redeem it, we could give it rebirth, we could re-anoint it, we could fix it up.
If folks want to join me tomorrow night for the shir, they can send me on Facebook or email if they want the link to the Zoom.
Okay, so, and the shir is about? I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I'm going to.
Oh, it's who knows 8, and using the number 8 to really explore the nature of the power of Hanukkah. It's always an exploration of the power of Hanukkah.
Very good, very good. Okay, Rav Mike Feuer, thank you so much for joining us.
Wonderful to see you. Take care.
Lots of love and Shabbat Shalom. All right, folks, you are listening to the Yishai Fleisher Show. Thank you so much for being with me, and it's a lot of fun. God bless all of you guys. Thanks for saying hi. Here's Penny. She says, "Kol hakavod." And a lot of other people, she says, "Oh, good morning from New York." There you go. Good morning from New York. And good morning to you. And good morning to Bruce in Pennsylvania. How fun is it that we can talk around the world about Torah from the land of Israel? Such a special thing. An easy way to support my podcast and this program is to go to Buy Me a Coffee. You could just buy me a cup of coffee by buymeacoffee.com/Yishai, or you could just go to YishaiFleisher.com. And through there, you'll see just the link at the top, which we just got that website fixed up. So check it out, YishaiFleisher.com. You can sign up for my newsletter, and you can just buy me a coffee. It's like such a simple way. And I've already had so many wonderful supporters who just bought me one cup of coffee, which is $5, or signed up for monthly donations, and just a lot of fun. It's an easy way to support one of your podcasts out there, hopefully. The other thing is that I want to say, what did I want to say? Oh, I wanted to thank all the folks that make the show happen. Let's start here with Lou, who helps produce the show. Thank you so much. God bless you, Lou. God bless Yocheved Seidman, Moshe Herman, Tabitha, and Ben Bresky, who pushed this show out through the net waves into the world, into your consciousness, wherever you are. Lots of love and lots of blessings. And thank you so much to our network, which is the Land of Israel Network, started by Ari and Jeremy. Great stuff, including their amazing farm. So check out thelandofisrael.com. And also, of course, let's thank jewishpress.com for pushing out the show through their wonderful channel, and check out their great email, the Jewish Express, jewishpress.com. And of course, the base of it all, which is Hebron. Hebron is the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs, the sister city of the holy city of Yerushalayim. And we support the continuing building and beautification and securing and opening up to the world of Hebron through hebronfund.org. Stay tuned, folks. More great stuff is on the way. Write me an email, yishai@yishaifleischer.com. Stay connected. Stay part of the story. Stay strong. Don't let anybody bring you down. More great stuff is on the way. God is broadcasting 24/7. All you have to do is tune in, and shalom.